Imagine if we went back in time and gave an NFL team a cheat sheet for the draft, telling them exactly who the best players are in the position they are drafting for the first and second rounds, occasionally giving them a little nudge when it comes to free agency and who they shouldn't let go. What would those teams look like now if they were able to always play the draft perfectly? That's what I'm here to try and answer. So today we're doing the Ravens, and the absolute first thing I thought is there is no chance that Ozzie Newsome hasn't drafted close to perfectly. However, does that hold up? We'll find out here. Starting with the offensive line, left tackle Ronnie Stanley. Then in 2012, in the second round with the 60th overall pick, the Ravens selected Kelechi Osemele, and of course that was the correct pick, but I'm also going to say, because of obviously this was more of a cap space move, like I've said before, we don't have to think about that. They also should have kept Kelechi Osemele, so he's back on the team here. Center Jeremy Zutter, right guard Marshall Yanda, and then at right tackle, recently departed, but we're going to have him here because they've got no other alternative, it's Ricky Wagner. Then at tight end, in 2015, with the 55th overall pick, the Ravens selected Max Williams. Now that, in terms of the class, wasn't actually a bad pick. Jesse James was probably the best player to be available there, but Dennis Pitta, when healthy, would definitely be their starter. So we move down to the wide receivers. Mike Wallace at number 1. Then at the number 2 spot in 2011 with the 58th overall pick, they selected Torrey Smith at wide receiver. I immediately called that a not bad pick. They did, after all, win a Super Bowl with him as their receiver, but I certainly think you could argue that Randall Cobb may have been a better pick for them. And then in 2015 with the 26th overall pick, the Ravens selected Brashard Perriman. Now, maybe if Brashard Perriman had never gotten injured, we would have a different opinion here, but fact is he has been injured a lot, hasn't really done much for them, and in terms of the speed they were drafting there, a blazing 4.2 something, JJ Nelson would have been the only guy there really that would have come close to his speed, while they're 0.01 second apart, so they're right there. Stephon Diggs, who came in that year as well, 0.2 seconds slower than them, so in terms of that blazing speed, it was either between Brashard Perriman or JJ Nelson, and JJ Nelson has been available for a lot more games. Recent free agent signing Danny Woodhead would be the running back, although of course he's more of a third down pass catching guy. At fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, of course he is now left in free agency, and they certainly shouldn't be expected to pay him the $5 million it would have taken to keep him, but there is no other option for fullback except for one they had from last year, so we're just going to put him here to complete the offense. And of course, finally, quarterback, it's Joe Flacco. So that is the offense here. Not too many differences. Wide receiver obviously a little bit different. We're saying they keep a Kelechi Osemele, but obviously they're pretty happy to have let him go. Now we move on to the defense. At free safety, recent signing Tony Jefferson. Then at strong safety across from him, Eric Weddle. And then another safety in 2013 with the 32nd overall pick, the Ravens selected Matt Elam. Jonathan Cyprien would have been available there, so that is your backup safety there. Behind Tony Jefferson and Eric Weddle is Jonathan Cyprien. We'll move on to the linebackers. Terrell Suggs at right outside linebacker. We're going to have the recently released Elvis Dumervil here at left outside linebacker, because really they don't have any other decent options. And then in 2014 with the 17th overall pick, the Ravens selected CJ Mosley. That was the correct pick. And then in 2013 with the 56th overall pick, the Ravens selected Arthur Brown at inside linebacker. Now actually, because of the class, that wasn't a bad pick. We'll call it not bad, but we're going to say they could have drafted C.O. Moore. Now C.O. Moore obviously hasn't had an incredible start to his career, although didn't do too badly. Obviously had a decent end of the season with the Cardinals. Just to keep things interesting here, say C.O. Moore over Arthur Brown, but they didn't do badly considering the class. Then finally moving on to the cornerbacks, with the first cornerback in 2011, we already know who it is, the 27th overall pick, they selected Jimmy Smith. Could have been Richard Sherman, then the other two guys are already on the team, Young and Arrington, and then we move on to the defensive line. At nose tackle, Brandon Williams, and at defensive tackle in 2014 with the 48th overall pick, the Ravens selected Timmy Jernigan. That was the correct pick. And then in 2012, 35th pick in the draft, the Ravens selected Courtney Upshaw. Now they drafted Courtney Upshaw as an outside linebacker, and in terms of outside linebackers, that was actually the correct choice. You couldn't have picked anybody better there, not saying that that was necessarily a great pick. However, if we bend it a little bit, make it a defensive end, could have had Olivier Vernon, and that is the defense then in that situation. Ridiculous safeties, really nice linebackers, ridiculous cornerbacks. Well, not ridiculous cornerbacks, but any cornerback group with Richard Sherman as your number one is pretty damn good, and a very nice defensive line. The Ravens, if they'd always drafted perfectly, wouldn't actually be too different, but there's just a couple of key positions that got upgraded very nicely, and that would make them a very, very good looking team. Of course, they have a very nice offensive line. They have about 55 tight ends and not that many wide receivers. It'll be interesting to see what they do in this year's draft.